Hey everyone, this is Keith. I'm back with another video, and this one is kind of a quick, immediate impressions of the Super Tenere. For those of you who saw the previous video where I talked about purchasing the bike and what I was looking for, this is a 2-week follow-up on my experience so far. I haven't ridden very much because in the Northeast, winter is still hanging on. We've had some snow and a bunch of rain and cold temperatures, so I've only been able to put about 170 miles on the bike. But I can say that very quickly I've been very impressed with it. I'm still trying to figure out some of the things on the display. It's a little bit confusing, but it has just been a great bike. It feels like it does everything well. And just to give you a few quick, immediate impressions of the Tenere. First, I found it to be very smooth. It is just so comfortable, quiet. It just seems steady. You don't notice any vibration whatsoever at all. It does its job really quietly. I'll say too that despite being about 600 pounds, it carries the weight very well. You really don't know it's there. It's not that difficult to take off the side stand. And I'm a small built guy. I'm only 5'8", 170 pounds. But I can get it off the side stand easily, and I can put it up on the center stand very easily, easier than my VFR. When you're wheeling it around, it just does not feel as big as the bike really is. The other thing that I think the Tenere has done really well is that despite all the electronics that it has, it's very unobtrusive. You don't really know that there are systems there. They just do their job and you don't even notice it. It's got ABS, it's got traction control, and it's got 2 different riding maps. You can tell the difference between the sport and the tour maps for the acceleration. It's a little bit snappier when it's in sport mode, but you just don't feel the other systems, at least at this point. I'm only doing street riding because our dirt roads are still really messy and muddy here. One little downside I've seen is with the factory luggage. The best advice I got was to push down on the lids to operate the keys, but it still feels like the keys want to snap off in the locks. They're very hard to turn, whether it's taking the bags off or just opening them up, opening the lids. I've sprayed some WD-40 in there, but it really hasn't seemed to have much of a long-term impact. I'll do a video on the bags at some point so people can see how they operate. Another impression I got pretty quickly too is that the bike is really comfortable. The seat feels good. Granted, I've only ridden it for maybe an hour at a time, but the windshield takes a lot of the wind off of you. You don't really even notice it. And I've adjusted the windshield to a couple different positions. It just feels like a great riding position where you can ride all day. I also think that the bike has pretty good power. It's not overwhelming, like you feel like you're going to get into trouble with it. But for what kind of riding I do, I think it's going to work out really well. It's definitely not a sport bike, but it's not, a big pig either. It's comparable to my VFR, which has about 100 horsepower. I'll say too that the bike, because it's so smooth and comfortable and poised, it really builds speed pretty deceptively. You can see in some of the videos, I'm hitting some of these twisties at a pretty good clip, and I didn't really even notice until I looked down, but they are probably faster than I would do on the VFR, quite honestly. It just takes it so well. And I'll say too that the bike is like a sport touring bike, regardless of it being an adventure bike. It can ride the twisties really well. I think I'm going to be able to tour all day on it. I'm going to find out this weekend when I take a long trip to Pennsylvania. It just does everything a sport touring bike does real well. The only other downside that I've really had, and it's kind of minor, is just the throttle. The throttle seems a little bit snatchy. I can't think of a better word, but it's ride-by-wire, and it just going on and off the throttle just seems a little abrupt. And that carries over to the cruise control as well. Cruise control is awesome for when I've used it, but when you take it off cruise control, unless you have your hand on the throttle giving it some gas, it wants to decelerate pretty noticeably. So it's just something I have to get used to. It's just a minor thing. But overall, I've had the bike 2 weeks, short amount of time. I'm super impressed with it. And I think if you're considering a Tenere, I think it's well worth looking at. I hope this experience I've had has been useful to you. If you have any questions, leave them in the box below. If you like my videos, subscribe or give me a thumbs up.